You're watching CT25 with Eric Parker, sponsored by Johnson Brunetti.
Welcome back. President Trump is coming up on his 100th day in office. He marks that milestone on Wednesday. Most would agree it's been a very active 100 days. Alex Putterman is a state government reporter with CT Insider. He takes a look at what kinds of things have changed here in Connecticut since the president started his second term. You can, of course, see his reporting in this morning's edition of Hearst newspapers around the state and on ctinsider.com. And you can see him right here in Studio A. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I told you, I've been reading your byline for a long time. I'm a fan of your work. This project, looking at the first 100 days of Trump, why is that such an important milestone to look at?
Yeah, I think pundits, analysts often use 100 days as sort of a milestone to mark just the beginning of a presidency, and you sort of get a sense of what the presidency is going to be like, what the president's priorities are, and sort of what the whole vibe is. And I would say we certainly have gotten a sense of that. This has not been a slow 100 days.
Yeah, not a slow rollout for sure. And I think it's fascinating to me that it's for sure our viewers, I don't suspect there's many of our viewers who are saying, it's been all right. It's either been the greatest 100 days ever or the worst 100 days ever. Would you agree as you did your research? There's not a lot of people, I don't think, in the middle on this one.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. You know, there's always a range of viewpoints, but I think you're right. We hear, especially in a blue state like Connecticut, we hear a lot of people are very fired up, angry, really, at a lot of what the Trump administration has done. Obviously, Trump continues to also have fans who would you know, follow him anywhere and are going to defend his policies. Yeah, we're definitely seeing those two sides.
I want to take you through some of the things that you've been looking into and kind of debrief you on what you found. And one of the big things is cuts. And one of the places we saw the cuts was universities and with research funding especially. Has that affected us here in Connecticut a lot?
Yeah, so universities are definitely kind of on the front lines of a lot of this Trump stuff. You know, the universities in Connecticut have not been slammed the way that a Harvard or a Columbia has, although that could be coming at any point, certainly. We have seen some small grants cut off, you know, to UConn, to Yale, even to Sacred Heart University. And then you mentioned research funding. Research funding right now is sort of in a limbo where a lot of people who do that kind of medical research and other types of research really don't know what's going to happen. Some of it is tied up in court, but there's potential for really, really severe cuts to research funding that would affect all of the major universities in Connecticut, for sure.
And obviously student visas plays into that as well. And I've seen some of that tied to the research piece where a researcher lost a student visa. But we've had confirmation that student visas have been lost across the state at universities.
Yes. Several dozen students at Connecticut universities have had their visas revoked somewhat abruptly in the last few weeks.
Another big area to look at is funding that would normally flow from the federal government to the state government. And the Department of Public Health is a big area there. Have you, in your reporting, come across some big effects in that piece?
Yes, definitely. The Trump administration is seeking to cut $150 million to Connecticut specifically. The national total, of course, is much bigger for a whole array of things. And some of the things that they've cut, and it's been kind of a slow drip of cuts, really, some of them might not surprise people. You know, vaccination programs. It's maybe not a surprise that the Trump administration, despite having sort of rolled out the COVID vaccine, we know that their views on vaccination are kind of complicated. But then there are some things, for example, the Connecticut Tumor Registry, which looks at cancer patterns, has lost some funding. So it's really, you know, here, there, and everywhere we're seeing some money drying up.
Is there, in some of those things, I mean, talking about like vaccines, for instance, you know, RFK outspoken in many cases about vaccines and saying that he would avoid them in his role as a cabinet secretary. But then the state feeling strongly, the leaders here, that they should continue. Does that put the state in a position of then having to pick up that funding and run with it?
Yes, so that's a big subject really across state government. You know, the legislature and the governor right now are negotiating a two-year budget, and what we hear over and over again is there's just so much uncertainty. And not to get ahead of ourselves too much, but you know, Medicaid could lose some funding. You know, food assistance could lose funding, and we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So in Hartford right now, legislators are forced to construct a budget without knowing how much money is going to come from the federal government or how much is going to disappear, and trying to work out different contingencies and figure out which holes they want to fill, which holes are just going to go unfilled, which priorities they're going to continue to push that might have pre-existed the Trump administration, and which ones might have to be sacrificed because they've got to save money to fill this hole over here. It's a very tricky assignment they have.
Is it also a tricky assignment for a seasoned reporter like you? Because it is, whether you think this is the greatest 100 days or the worst 100 days, I don't think anyone would argue that there's a lot of uncertainty in what's happening. So is it hard to report on as well when one day something's on, the next day something's off, and maybe there's a threat, but you don't know? It's just a lot of hedging your bets, I guess, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of a fire hose. Also, I mean, one thing we should mention is that, Connecticut's Attorney General, William Tong, has been joining a lot of his colleagues in filing lawsuits to try to block a lot of these policies, and in some cases they've succeeded, at least in pausing them. And yeah, we've had a lot of that where there's a big announcement from the Trump administration, there's a scramble to figure out what it means, then there's a lawsuit, then it's paused, now it's kind of on the back burner. It certainly is not always easy to keep track of what's happening, what isn't happening, what could happen in the near future.
We've talked universities, we've talked state government. Let's talk private companies, because there's certainly a lot of private companies that have a lot of their balance sheet tied up in work for the federal government, especially in the defense industry. What is your reporting seen on that?
Yes. So Connecticut companies have lost more than $100 million in federal contracts. There have been a couple of companies in particular, for example, a company that's owned by the Mashantucket Pequot tribe that did a lot of contracting with USAID, which has been sort of a top target for the Trump administration. So they've lost a bunch of money. Gardner, which is a pretty well-known company downstate, has lost a bunch of mostly smaller contracts. Leases have been canceled as well. So private companies are definitely seeing the effects for sure.
Only about 30 seconds left, but as somebody who covers government for a living, has the general partisan discourse also hit Connecticut? I mean, obviously you said it's a blue state, probably more people than not think that some of these ideas from Trump are misguided, but is there still just a different partisan feel happening right now?
Yeah, I would say Democrats seem very united in opposition to Trump, even those such as the governor, who started off with more of a wait-and-see approach, beginning to speak out a little bit more. I think Republicans have often accused them of overreacting a little bit, but if you talk to, I think, most Democratic elected officials, they're going to say that what Trump is doing in Connecticut is bad news for the state.
Well, hopefully everybody's going to go out and read one of your articles in today's paper, and as you continue throughout the week and look at all the effects as we head into the 100th day. Alex Putterman, thank you so much for being with us here on CT25.
My pleasure.
Again, check out Alex's article on ctinsider.com and in Hearst papers, including the New Haven Register, Middletown Press, Meriden Record Journal, the Waterbury Republican American, and the JI in Manchester. And all this week, we're looking at the impact of the first 100 days of the Trump presidency and how it's having an impact on the way we live our lives. Investigative reporters Sam Smink and Cassidy Williams have been digging into the impact, and CT Insider's Dan Haar has been working with our team traveling the state to find out how you're feeling about his time in office so far. We'll have live reports starting tomorrow at 5.